This is the bridge over the River Kwai in Thailand. It has become a symbol of man's determination to suffer and even die to retain his freedom and dignity. For Thailand in the 20th century, the main problem has been to retain its freedom and dignity as a nation. The pessimists say it's going to be a second Vietnam. The optimists say this can be avoided. The cynics say the greatest danger is that Thailand will become a simple satellite of the United States. The realists look at a map of Asia and know that Thailand is important. The American people ask the question, how important? How many American men? How much money? This report is about Thailand. What are we doing here? Where are we going?
This is Pom Tum, deep in northeast Thailand. Just as the River Kwai was a setting for a heroic struggle 25 years ago, this area, impoverished, barren, and fearful, is the battleground for a new struggle, this time against communist-led insurgents. The outcome of this battle will determine whether Thailand becomes another Vietnam and whether the American military commitment deepens tragically. Along with my colleague Lou Chaffee, we will examine this possibility during the next half hour.
ABC Scope, the wide world of people and events. This week, the Vietnam War, Part 72, Thailand, Counterattack. ABC News correspondent John Scally will return with that story after this message in just 1 minute.
Thailand has often been called two cities. One, the remote hinterland, and two, the bustling, brassy capital of Bangkok. And the city itself is actually two cities. Bangkok, the modern, combines the virtues and vices of any of the chief cities of the world and is called the new crossroads of the Orient. It is riding the crest of an unprecedented economic boom. A visiting World Bank mission surveyed Thailand's economy recently and was flabbergasted to learn that it's expanding at a rate of 10% a year, almost twice that of even the most prosperous Western countries. Plush air-conditioned hotels abound, and new shoebox-style office buildings dominate the skyline in a helter-skelter transformation of what was once a sedate oriental port. Traffic congestion has now reached staggering proportions. The pedicabs of old are gone, and in their places there's a contest for highway supremacy by Japanese taxis, U.S. Army vehicles, smoke-belching buses, and noisy motor tricycles. The unceasing flood of tourists, plus the influx of American military and civilian personnel, account for much of the confusion, but much, too, is the inevitable consequence of progress. In the old days, a languid had settled over the city once dark. Now, Bangkok swings at night. Thousands of colored neon signs proclaim the city's bars, bathhouses, massage parlors, and dozens of luxurious nightclubs, each with its pretty Thai hostesses. These spots are the favorite.
You come fly back to me. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. You found me love and you left me back. I'm sorry about that.
Although Western influence has drastically changed the city in the past few years, there still exists Bangkok the Old, an ancient city of glittering temples and palaces of fairy tale magnificence. If Bangkok the New symbolizes the nation's economic boom and its full-scale emergence into the 20th century, it is through Bangkok the Old that one appreciates the history that has converted this nation into America's most dependable ally in Southeast Asia. Thailand is unique among the countries of this area in that it has never been a European colony. Consequently, it has no anti-colonial complex handicapping its attitude toward the West because it's always been fiercely independent. If Thailand's traditional independence is one leg of its tripod of stability, a second leg is certainly the popularity of the king, a direct descendant of the Chakri dynasty, which has reigned since 1782. The present king, Bhumibol, who reigns with his beautiful queen Sirikit, is clearly a strong and unifying national symbol. While the king has influence, the power of government lies with a coalition of military and civilian leaders led by Prime Minister Tanom Kittikachorn, an army field marshal who took office more than 3 years ago. The 400 temples scattered around Bangkok act as a magnet for the city's ever-increasing tourist traffic, and they symbolize the third bastion of Thailand's stability, the national religion, Buddhism. Fully 95% of the population are Buddhists. Unlike the Buddhism of Vietnam with its overtones of strident political involvement, the Buddhism of Thailand is reflective and inner-directed. The result, a national mood of continuity, even serenity, seen in the soaring spires and the intricate architecture of the elaborate temples. Bangkok was once called the Venice of the East because of the maze of klongs or canals which intersected the city and extended into the countryside. A big number now have been filled to make roads, but many of those remaining are jammed with boats of every size and description. A must on every tourist agenda is a visit to watch the early morning market boats on their way to Bangkok. Unlike much of Asia, Thailand is not overcrowded and could probably support 2 or 3 times the present population of 32 million. Combine this with a favorable climate and the fact that nearly 85% of the farmers own their own land, and it is not surprising that Thailand is rich by Asian standards and richer still in potential. A varied array of silks, foods, and spices can be purchased at the picturesque floating markets. But it is not Bangkok's beauty or the nation's unity and prosperity that have made it the keystone for America's defense position in Southeast Asia. At this, the headquarters for the entire U.S. military presence in Thailand, American military leaders point out that Thailand and the United States see eye to eye in the need to stop communist expansion in Asia, and Thailand's geography and determination give it a crucial role. Most of the some 40,000 U.S. servicemen in Thailand are stationed at 7 air bases stretching from just outside Bangkok to an advanced outpost only 18 minutes flying time from North Vietnam. Under a unique partnership, all air bases remain Thai property. A Thai officer commands each one, even though the activity is largely American. However, the Thai Air Force not only maintains its own planes at each base, but has the task of providing ground and air security for the huge installations. These planes, American F-105s and Phantoms, take off from these bases daily to bomb targets in North Vietnam. Although these U.S. planes are aimed at the enemy outside Thailand, both Washington and Bangkok are also watching a communist presence inside Thailand, festering in the 15 provinces of the Northeast. This area is the newest target of communist subversion. The implications of this threat were pointed out by Bangkok newspaper editor Kukrat Pramaj in an interview with correspondent Chaffee.
Well, the northeast of this country from the beginning was the most backward, and with the result that it became quite an open field for communist infiltration, due partly to its geographical position of being near to Laos and other countries where communism is widespread. And because it's the poorest part of the country, the government has been lately paying special attention to it. And a great deal has been done within the past 10 years to improve the lot of the people in the Northeast by modern communications, by building more highways, more roads, so that they could send their produce to the market, and by development right inside the villages, which were before far removed from any kind of civilization. Now they are improving rapidly.
But why is it that nothing was done in the Northeast until the communists had moved in themselves?
Now, if you ask me questions like that, I should begin to lose my good manners. I have always been angry with that sort of thing myself. Why, indeed? The northeast of this country were left unattended, and no one seemed to be concerned about it for very long years. And all of a sudden, there's this communist infiltration, news that communists are telling the people that things are not good enough. And then we take the leadership from the communists themselves and start to make improvements. I don't think it's reasonable.
Do you think that the menace is exaggerated? It's been said that it is exaggerated. There are not that many communists, and the threat is not that great in the Northeast.
I wish I could say that. That would be... that would make me happy to say that, but I'm afraid I can't. I would know that it is not true. The communist threat in the Northeast is very serious. In the beginning, they were not all that serious, but now they seem to have accelerated their activities, and the crimes committed by the communists in the Northeast are becoming more serious, more frightening in a way. They have taken up real terrorism. They have murdered government officials. They have killed off village headmen or school teachers who don't join them, who don't belong to their sides, and whom they thought might be informers. With the result that the villagers in far distant places are now quite afraid of the communists, quite afraid of this terrorism, so much so that sometimes they refuse to cooperate with the government.
This is Bangkok Harbor, one of the busiest ports in Asia. It was the normal gateway for the modern equipment which poured into Thailand to transform its economic and military strength. But because of the needs of the Vietnam War, it's now too small for the international traffic which seeks to unload and pick up cargoes here. To keep this harbor from becoming a supply bottleneck such as Saigon, some 18 months ago, the U.S. Army engineers and civilian contractors began building an entirely new deep-water port directly on the Gulf of Siam, some 100 miles away, at a place called Satahip. Now the port of Bangkok handles mainly civilian cargoes. Military supplies are put ashore at Satahip, which is directly connected by a new network of highways to the new air bases. The main artery, financed and built jointly by the United States and Thailand, is called Friendship Highway. And it's far more than just a showpiece because it reaches 600 kilometers deep into the interior, all the way to the border of Laos. American helicopters manned by Thai pilots are the eyes and ears of some 30,000 Thai Army troops and police units who have the job of rooting out communist terrorists in the Northeast. As you fly over the dusty, frequently barren landscape, you can understand why the average annual income of the some 10 million people in this area is average $60 a year compared to $125 elsewhere. Dozens of Army units have now been scattered at special camps throughout the Northeast as part of a new campaign of stepped-up pressure against the terrorists during the current dry season. The offensive is being spearheaded by the tough, well-trained Thai Special Forces. But finding the enemy is no easy task. To begin with, the communists move in small bands, and there are no more than 1,500 in the Har Corps, plus several thousand sympathizers, mostly among the 35,000 North Vietnamese refugees in the border areas. Of late, the sudden sweeps of special force units such as this one have kept the communists on the run, giving the villages a security shield they've never had before. Frequently, Thai government forces penetrate deep into the mountains to locate an enemy base camp. Occasionally, there's a brief firefight, but the foe frequently manages to slip away because he knows he's outnumbered and outgunned. However, patrols such as this have managed to round up small stores of enemy weapons, usually small arms, as well as propaganda material, plus several hundred suspected communist terrorists. Some have confessed that they were trained in a North Vietnam special guerrilla warfare school just outside Hanoi. However, the Thai government, seeking to profit from the lessons of Vietnam, realizes that it's not the troops and guns that will decide the success or failure of the drive to stop communist terrorism in the northeast provinces. The targets must be not the communists, but the villages that the enemy hopes to subvert one by one until the entire region is aflame with rebellion. The primitive villages of the Northeast are a potential breeding ground for thousands of future communists unless the government acts to improve living conditions today. With economic help from the United States, the Thai government has launched a crash program of rural development. There is much to be done to convince the villagers that the government in far-off Bangkok cares about them. But a start has been made, and this year, as well as last, the Thais matched American aid dollar for dollar and provided all the personnel needed. 16 mobile development teams, each staffed by more than 100 persons, are now busy at work providing practical help for the villagers, particularly the youngsters. While other government teams dig wells to irrigate the land and improve the crops, the young are being given quick courses as auto mechanics, for example, so that they will not have to rely on the arid land as their fathers and grandfathers before them. The new network of roads, which has opened up the Northeast, promises to keep them busy once they learn their trade. There's also a coordinated campaign to increase the output of handicraft and other homemade articles which can be sold at a profit not only to the tourists but to markets overseas where Thai goods are becoming increasingly popular. Even embroidery is being taught by government instructors to the very young in the Northeast, another example of how it's possible to tap the patience and talent of those who want to learn an ancient art which can flourish again at a profit in the 20th century. The overall program is called Accelerated Rural Development, and the Thais have allocated more than $100 million to it from their own funds in the past 2 years. But despite the name, results of necessity will be slow. Even the young men who can be taught to be barbers, it's felt, will be more resistant to the communist propaganda which seeks to convince them that the Bangkok government has sold out their country to the American imperialists and don't care whether they live in misery the rest of their lives. Many of the young men and women who run these programs are specially selected inhabitants of the Northeast who have been taken to Bangkok to be trained and return as instructors. New schools are the backbone of the government's approach. The accent for now of necessity is on the practical rather than the textbook. For example, learning how to string tobacco leaves which can be sold at a profit. What can assist now in the struggle for a better life gets priority, although eventually there are plans for a general education as well. Some women are now being taught how to weave cloth. Thailand is the home of the brightly colored silk cloth, which is a favorite purchase of American tourists. And some of this now, and hopefully far more later, is turned out in small workshops in the Northeast. There is a long way to go, but in Thailand, progress is measured in small steps. Before we left Thailand, correspondent Chaffee and I discussed the future with Foreign Minister Tanat Koman in Bangkok.
Mr. Foreign Minister, you're sending troops to Vietnam, and yet you're having insurrection problems of your own in the Northeast. Why?
Well, we feel that we should share the responsibility in the struggle in Vietnam too. And perhaps it is because we feel, or we reach the conclusion, that the sooner the conflict in Vietnam is brought to an end, the better will be the situation in the northeast of Thailand. I mean by that if the war in South Vietnam could be ended soon, the communists would not have the facilities of indulging in subversive activities and insurgency attempts against northeast Thailand. I feel that the two situations have a close relationship, and we better go to the root of the problem rather than remain in the periphery of the problem.
Well, do you feel that Thailand is going to be another Vietnam?
It cannot be another Vietnam. As a matter of fact, if we are fighting the war in Vietnam, if we are joining with our friends and allies in fighting the war in Vietnam, it is with the hope that there will be no second Vietnam, no third Vietnam. As a matter of fact, no other Vietnam, meaning no more aggression in this part of the world. I think the military protection of the United States has brought peace and stability to Europe. Would you deny the same benefits to Asia? I hope the answer will be positive and not negative, because in the present world there are only two military umbrellas, the Soviet one and the American one. There are no other military umbrellas elsewhere. Therefore, since American military umbrella has brought peace and prosperity to Europe, I hope that it can extend the same benefits to Asia, for which you, the generous American nation, will earn gratitude from millions of people in this part of the world.
John Scally will have a final word on Thailand counterattack after this message in just 1 minute.
We began this report in northeast Thailand, and we close here in one of the villages in the same area. It's impossible to answer with accuracy and certainty the question, will Thailand become another Vietnam? But speaking as one reporter, I don't think so. I am more impressed by the differences than with the similarities between Thailand and Vietnam. In Thailand, the king acts as a powerful unifying force. 85% of the peasants own their own land, and over 90% of the people are Buddhists, and the monks stay out of politics. It's true that there has been an American military buildup of sorts, some 40,000 now, but 9,000 of these are engineering and construction troops that are building roads, highways, installations, and even a deep port. The others are American Air Force personnel who are located at 7 American bases flying missions against North Vietnam. In the critical Northeast, there are no American troops in action. Thais have even taken over as helicopter pilots, ferrying in Thai troops into military action in this area. Even more important, any objective visitor would have to conclude that the Thais are making encouraging progress in satisfying the yearnings of the villagers for a better way of life. Progress which comes at the point of a gun is always uneven, sometimes an illusion. But the progress that is visible here, I believe, is a sign that the Thais are on their way to solving their problem without the need for direct American military help. This is John Scally, ABC, in Kon Tum, Thailand.
This has been ABC Scope, the Vietnam War, Part 72, Thailand, Counterattack. Join Join us next week at this time over many of these ABC stations when ABC Scope will bring you new insights into the Vietnam War, on the battlefront, on the diplomatic front, and on the home front. John Causier speaking. This has been a presentation of ABC News.
Step right up as ABC presents Carousel, starring Robert Goulet, Pernell Roberts, Marlon Mason, and introducing Mary Grover.
See Carousel tomorrow night on ABC.
This is the bridge over the River Kwai in Thailand. It has become a symbol of man's determination to suffer and even die to retain his freedom and dignity. For Thailand in the 20th century, the main problem has been to retain its freedom and dignity as a nation. The pessimists say it's going...
In the old days, a languid had settled over the city once dark. Now, Bangkok swings at night. Thousands of colored neon signs proclaim the city's bars, bathhouses, massage parlors, and dozens of luxurious nightclubs, each with its pretty Thai hostesses. These spots are the favorite.
You come fly back to me. I'm sorry about that. I'm sorry about that. You found me love and you left me back. I'm sorry about that.
Although Western influence has drastically changed the city in the past few years, there still exists Bangkok the Old, an ancient city of glittering temples and palaces of fairy tale magnificence. If Bangkok the New symbolizes the nation's economic boom and its full-scale emergence into the 20th century,
to be a second Vietnam. The optimists say this can be avoided. The cynics say the greatest danger is that Thailand will become a simple satellite of the United States. The realists look at a map of Asia and know that Thailand is important. The American people ask the question, how important? How many American men? How much money? This report is about Thailand. What are we doing here? Where are we going?
this is Pom Tum, deep in northeast Thailand. Just as the River Kwai was the setting for a heroic struggle 25 years ago, this area, impoverished, barren, and fearful, is the battleground for a new struggle, this time against communist-led insurgents. The outcome of this battle will determine whether Thailand becomes another Vietnam and whether the American military commitment deepens tragically. Along with my colleague Lou Chaffee, we will examine this possibility during the next half hour.
ABC Scope, the wide world of people and events. This week, the Vietnam War, Part 72, Thailand, Counterattack. ABC News correspondent John Scally will return with that story after this message in just 1 minute.
Thailand has often been called two cities. One, the remote hinterland, and two, the bustling, brassy capital of Bangkok. And the city itself is actually two cities. Bangkok, the modern, combines the virtues and vices of any of the chief cities of the world and is called the new crossroads of the Orient. It is riding the crest of an unprecedented economic boom. A visiting World Bank mission surveyed Thailand's economy recently and was flabbergasted to learn that it's expanding at a rate of 10% a year, almost twice that of even the most prosperous Western countries. Plush air-conditioned hotels abound, and new shoebox-style office buildings dominate the skyline in the helter-skelter transformation of what was once a sedate oriental port. Traffic congestion has now reached staggering proportions. The pedicabs of old are gone, and in their places there's a contest for highway supremacy by Japanese taxis, U.S. Army vehicles, smoke-belching buses, and noisy motor tricycles. The unceasing flood of tourists, plus the influx of American military and civilian personnel, account for much of the confusion. But much, too, is the inevitable consequence of progress.